Uhuru, Tino Blaine King here. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about Kanye West and an African-centered curriculum. Let's get it. Uhuru na Nguvu.
No. You looking at a free black man.
Talk Black 360.
You want to know what a free black man look like? Look at me.
Uhuru na Nguvu. Welcome to another dose of Talk Black 360. I am your host, Tino Blaine King, the Kool-Aid Kush, the pioneer of Black pragmatism. I've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about something or someone who is trending in the news, of course, none other than Kanye West. The topic of today's show is Kanye West is out of his African mind. So, to get started in the show, I want to bring your attention to a post that I put up concerning the situation that took place with Kanye and his interview on Big Boy TV. Very interesting interview. If you get the opportunity to take a look at it, it's on YouTube. Let's start off with the post that I put up. The post said, "I love his intellect, but Kanye West would be a black genius if his foundation was not flawed. This is why we need an African-centered curriculum for our kids to contrast white supremacy." See, what I see is Kanye is simply caught up in the confines of white supremacy, or at least his mind is caught in the confines of white supremacy. So let's get right into this. What do we say here? We said that his foundation is flawed. And if his foundation was not flawed, you'd see something different. I do believe Kanye has the thought process of a genius. He's honest and intellectual and thoughtful. He is a free thinker. And the problem with being a free thinker and then trying to confine free thought inside of the American political system, white supremacy, and religion, he's going to have a lot of issues, as you can see now. But let's just take a look before we dig too deep into it and see what the ancestors have to say. Because remember, if we are talking about an African-centered curriculum being the resolution for our future Kanyes, then we've got to make it make sense. So let's take a look at what the brother Dr. Clark has to say about Kanye's situation with religion.
Black people are ticklish on this because black people think that everything in the Bible is true. I question the intelligence of anyone who thinks everything in the Bible is true or supposed to be true. It's allegory, stories told to illustrate a point at a time when there were very few people reading books. Now, if you want to get so dewy-eyed over the Bible, which is a carbon copy of a carbon copy, why don't you go back and read the original Egyptian text?
Okay, so there we have it. We're looking at what Dr. Clark just said about the context of the Bible. And remember, as a free thinker, this is the boundaries that Kanye is trying to force his thought process into. And as you'll see in a little, in a few minutes from this interview, the complications that he's having with that. So when we look at what exactly took place on the post, I want to point out a couple of things there. There was a comment on that post from my dear brother Cedric Washington, and he said, after reading the post, crazy thing is he was raised in an African-centered home and learned an African-centered worldview from his mother. Now, I had to reply to that, and my reply was, most of our African American leaders were Christians, but that's not African-centered, in my opinion. If we go down that road, we end up right back where we're at. And that being a problem because many of us try to connect to, we try to connect the dots as it pertains to seeing the struggles that we're having in America and with white supremacy, and the foundation that we have to calibrate our thoughts just leads us right back to white supremacy. So after that, there was a little bit of an exchange that I want you to hear about before we dig into this interview. I responded to Brother Cedric and I said, his mother was a Christian, but can you be African-centered and Christian? And Crystal Carr responded, yes, you can. And then Brother Washington responded, why, yes. Now, luckily, in this post, we did get another person to respond by the name of Darnell Coleman. And Darnell Coleman had some great insight. She said, Kanye's mom was one of my teachers in school. She definitely taught us to be proud of our blackness and exposed us to a lot of black literature and encouraged and taught us to be good speakers. African-centered, I'm not sure about that. This is instrumental because I don't think that an African-centered education or an African-centered curriculum for our youth is going to be able to bring any religious dogma into its fold. And that's important because I want to be very clear. I am not knocking Christianity. I know that a lot of great Christians have done great work in black liberation. But what I'm saying is the problems that Kanye is having could have potentially been solved if he had this type of African-centered curriculum upbringing and foundation that I'm talking about. So lastly, the comment that Brother Sad made was, the point is that being a believer and being African-centered are not mutually exclusive. And that may be true if someone has a Christian value system that they use to improve their self or for self-improvement. However, the Christian value system for an individual is much different than the religious dogma that Christians put out. And I'm going to express that to you a little bit in the details of the videos. But I want you to keep in mind, and I want you to understand, I want to be clear on this. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that Christians cannot participate or be involved in African-centered curriculums. I'm saying an African-centered curriculum should never teach Christianity as one of its tenets. Okay, so having said that, let's just move along and take a look at some of the ordeal that Kanye was dealing with in this interview.
Y'all got to think, man, black people are like the housekeepers of America. Think about how your housekeeper, you know what I'm saying? They got a certain volume. They're supposed to talk in the house. We got a certain volume. We're supposed to talk in America. So what do you think if a housekeeper is screaming in my house? What do you think the other housekeeper going to tell them?
Be quiet.
Be quiet, yay. Be quiet, yay.
Don't disrupt the house.
Don't disrupt America, yay. We orphans out here, but don't disrupt. There is.
But what if some people feel like you siding with the slave master too? If we're in the house and it's the Trump household, it's like just like shit. You siding with the slave master.
Now, that's interesting, and it's very interesting because, as you can see, conceptually, Kanye sees the problem in America. He sees it, but he does not have the foundational principles that he needs in order to be able to resolve the issues that he's seeing in America and that he's facing. And that comes from his acceptance of politics and the way that politics was presented to him, and his acceptance of religion and the way that religion was presented to him. So in the post, you saw that there were three figures. There was Christ, there was his wife, and then there was Donald Trump representing his politics. Now, of course, the Christ and Donald Trump are going to be pretty obvious here. But the one thing that we are going to not be able to be as specific about is the significance of his wife in an African-centered curriculum. Because in an African spirituality and in almost every African spiritual system, you will find at the center of those systems are the black man, woman, and child. This is the basis and the foundation of the spirit of black people. Now, I'm saying that because it is supportive of the type of mind state that a person needs to be in order to properly process their standing or their position inside of white supremacy. If you begin to allow white supremacy and the thoughts and the concepts and the foundation of white supremacy to invade your space and in your household, it's going to make you less capable of being able to attack it or get it out of your psyche. So this is why I'm saying that Kanye is out of his African mind. But let's keep looking, and we'll continue down the road to make this point.
How much of that was Kanye? How much of that was Kanye not being on his mental game? How much of that was Kanye on the breakdown and the breakthrough?
I love this also because Kobe Bryant won 5 championships. He sprained all kind of muscles all through his body, tore ligaments. And for people to go to Kanye West, where I'm playing in the highest level of mental sport, I had Mark Zuckerberg wanting to meet with me. You know what I'm saying? I had people come to want to meet with me that are makers of the world at this point. So I'm playing at this mental sport as a black man, post-Pac, post-Biggie, Puff Daddy, Jay-Z, in debt, completely controlled. The management knows how much exactly you're making on your tour, and it's just $2 less than what your house costs. And I'm ending up in debt every year. And then I have a breakdown. I should have a hospital in the back of our room for what I'm dealing with. But we don't make Kobe's legacy be about one torn ligament, and my legacy ain't about, oh, he got mental health. That just come with the level of sport I'm playing at.
Okay, so there it is. Kanye, again, he's able to conceptualize these situations. His thought process is open and clear. He's aware of his position and he's honest about his position. The problem that we're seeing here is Kanye does not have the tools needed to do the job of overcoming the situation that he's in. This is, I think, not a unique situation, but I do strongly believe that it's something that can be curbed if at a very young age, Kanye had the foundational principles of an African curriculum or an African-centered curriculum.
It has been institutionalized, slave mastery and slavery. Our mentality is only one of the two. Now we need to find freedom. You got 2 forms of freedom: financial freedom and freedom through serving something higher than yourself.
Are you free now?
So you see here, Kanye is having difficulty using the foundation that he has to solve the problem. But he very distinctly stated that there is a desire for freedom. But the tools that he has to try to attain the freedom that he's looking for don't rise to the duty of the job. And I think, again, this is why we need this African-centered curriculum, because the situation that Kanye is going through, I think a lot of our successful African Americans go through this situation. And the greatness of Kanye is that at least he's addressing it honestly. And by him addressing it honestly, he's giving us the information that we need to properly dissect this situation. So here we go. Last clip on Kanye. Let's take a look. Because like I said, there's a problem with not having this African-centered curriculum.
And he's like, I don't always agree with a lot of stuff. I said, wait a second. I didn't ask you if you agree with the stuff I'm doing. I'm not looking for your validation. I'm only looking for God's validation. I don't care about what Black Twitter got to say about it. I don't care about it. I was just going in. I haven't talked to Jay Brown since then. But Jay Brown, I love you.
You care about what white Twitter say?
I'm happy that that's a term.
Yeah.
Yes, and matter of fact, I do. I love Jack Dorsey, the owner of Twitter, that comes over my house and gives me business advice, looks at contracts, respects me, honors me. He is my favorite founder.
Jack Dorsey, Steve Jobs, Adidas. Don't forget about us.
Wow. Great job, big boy. Big boy really did his thing on that last statement, because if nothing else, he drove the point home that I think Kanye is going to it's going to puzzle him, and it's going to send him through that turmoil that he needs to go through to continue to elevate to an African level of thought. So in conclusion, let's go ahead and lay this out there. While I'm talking to you, I want to see if I can find another post that I did, because this post was in reference to the one that we're talking about. And what I did, because a lot of people weren't familiar with exactly what I was talking about when I talk about an African-centered curriculum. And I'm not suggesting that the African-centered curriculum is already there, or that we just need to go and find it and pick it up. What I'm saying is, for the unique situation that we're in 2019 and beyond, our African-centered curriculum should be ever-changing. Our ancestors have already told us the function of an education. An education is to teach a people how to solve their problems. If we're getting something other than an African-centered education, then what we're going to learn in these learning institutions of white supremacy is how to solve white supremacy's problems, or how to solve America's problems. So specifically, I want to give you the detail of this African-centered curriculum. Now, this is not the concluded version, but this is the direction that an African-centered curriculum needs to go in. And with this, it's going to allow us to begin to develop future generations of power for our people, children who are equipped with the foundational principles to solve Black people's problems. But let me just read this to you. Creating an African-centered education should serve several purposes: to inspire the Black child to love and grow with the desire to serve our people, to teach skills needed to solve the problems of our people, and also to give a vision of the world through the lens of a child of the diaspora. It should include, at many different levels, African history, African-centered global economics, diaspora civics, science, and critical thinking. Now, in this post, I just wanted to get some feedback, but I think at a later date, we're going to go into this post and talk about the feedback. I also want to, later this week, give you some information about the Kushite Cultural Center, which we deemed to be the Black Embassy, where we started working on that information. And I want to tell you all about what happened there and what is to come. So until the next time, you have two things to do. Stay strong and stay black. Ashe? This has been another dose of Talk Black 360.
No, no, no. You will never be enslaved again by no man.